all gay people in my phone, and welcome back once again to The Glass Closet. I am Nia, also known as @BitNia, and this is a show where we talk about gay shit that happens online and in the real world also. And I think the perfect encapsulation of that is our guest here today, my lovely longtime friend, Ava. I always try and give the guests like my interpretation of their bio. So like, let me fumble this real quick, right? I want to say Ava is editor-in-chief and founder of Ebony Tomatoes Collective, a Black literary magazine of incredible works, many works that have resonated deeply with myself and that you should all definitely engage with and read.
Stop.
And also lovely, beautiful human.
Thank you so much. I think you did a great job.
Oh, no, thank you.
I would have said the same thing myself.
Yeah. Lovely, beautiful, and editor.
Yes, and editor. No.
But want to give a little background to the gays?
Yes, of course. So my name is Ava. I'm a writer, I'm an editor, and I'm also, as you said, the founder and editor-in-chief of Ebony Tomatoes Collective. And aside from that, I'm passionate about farming, and all things nature, hiking, gardening, baking. I'm like Nara Smith, maybe if Nara Smith was like an anarchist and a lesbian and like.
That's a good bio.
Right, I'm like, actually, wait, let's write that down.
Nara Smith, if she slayed.
Yeah, like love Nara.
Nara Smith with a pickaxe. Like.
Yes.
Let me stop.
No. Nara Smith with a guillotine.
Oh, right. There's something here. We'll workshop later.
Okay,
I
yes.
That. But I was so interested to talk to you because I feel like this podcast has it's transformed so much since I've started it, and it's really come to be about, I think, the synchronization of the online world and how queerness manifests there and how that turns into real queer spaces and real, like, interactions with the community. Ebony Tomatoes Collective has such a vibrant online presence, and you guys do, like, melanated media, and I really just enjoy your reels. I think your reels are very fun when you did the little ribbon. I want to insert that.
My girl is a cunt, yeah, but only cause she's serving.
But then in real life, I think the work you create speaks so potently to like the real life experiences of Black queer people today. And then you also have these events where there is an ability to form real community with people, and I think that's dope as hell. Like, how do you feel about the relationship between the online and the community in real life?
I grew up in the internet age, and I was an only child and like in a single parent household, so like I wasn't in like a packed house with like siblings and cousins and like all these people. So like my way of socializing, at least in like my adolescence on, a lot of it was through like social media and the online space, because it was very popular at the time. That's how people our age, like awkward middle schoolers, felt comfortable interacting across space and time. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like I almost learned how to socialize through social media in a lot of ways, because that's just the generation we grew up in. But over time, I've gotten frustrated with that platform, with digital platforms, because I'm like, we're seeing now so much more political propaganda and so many more of our quote-unquote leaders paying very hefty checks to get their stuff boosted on Meta and Instagram and X, and we see all these platforms being co-opted by literal tech billionaires. So while social media is a really fun place to like connect with people across borders and time, I don't think it makes up for the things that are happening on the ground in real life community. So it's interesting approaching that from like a literary magazine perspective, where we want people to read our work, we want people to be excited about the stuff we're doing, but we also want to exist in the real world. So it's like, if they shut all the lights off right now, would you still be able to read about Black lesbians? Would you still be able to hear about Black trans discourse? Would you still be able to hear about community organizing efforts in food banks and community gardens? Yeah. Maybe not. So for Ebony Tomatoes, it's like we have this like fun social media space for people to be introduced to what we're doing. But at the end of the day, what we're really doing is meant to be like a physical record of our resistance and our love and our relationships that can exist whether or not someone who's white and rich owns social media.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I feel like really similarly, I mean, I guess the podcast is like a digital archive, but like I really feel paralleled by just like the idea of wanting to be potent that we were here and that we had a lot of stuff to say, and that it doesn't always have to be like in response to what they're saying. Like,
Yeah.
it can just be, like, our thing.
Big on that.
Yeah.
Big on
And
that.
one thing I've always wanted to ask you about and really appreciate is that, like, Ebony Tomatoes Collective, I feel like I've only seen the branding say, like, this is, like, for Black people,
Yeah.
right? But it's, like, I know, because I know you, that it is a lot of queer work, a lot of in reference to queerness, a lot of queer writers. And I think that's really important. That, I mean, it's I think it's valid on both sides, but I think it is, I appreciate that it is just queer. And it's not like, this is Black queerness. Like, it's just queer.
It just is what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, like, yeah, I mean, that's something that intersectionality has been really fun too. I don't think that's really a lot of how, like, we didn't really start, we became a much more queer space as the collective's gone on. So, like, this is like our third year of operating.
Congrats.
Thank you. But yeah, so I think over time it's naturally evolved to be like a queer space, and I think that's really important too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know, I think there's not, on both sides, like in Black spaces, queer like perspectives aren't like, it's kind of on the margins a bit, I still think.
For sure.
And in queer spaces, obviously, we're dealing with issues around like desirability and like people who are like still understanding intersectionality.
Very much that.
I think a lot of non-Black queer people have to grapple with the fact that just because they're gay does not mean they can't be racist or or are incapable of disregarding or disrespecting Black people in their life. So I think that Ebony Tomatoes is hopefully a way for everyone to learn and educate themselves on these things. But I will say, like, Ebony Tomatoes is Black and queer, but I think it's really important that it's like our collective is defined by the people who write for us and the people who do photography for us and like submit art to us. But at the end of the day, Ebony Tomatoes is for everyone, because everything that's affecting Black queer people will affect everyone eventually, if not very soon.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking, like, we are talking about issues like relationships and like Black on Black love, from like starting community gardens to land conservation, to political liberation around the world. And it's like, yes, these issues disproportionately affect Black and queer people, but they are the problems of the people. And at the end of the day, Ebony Tomatoes is a platform for the people and for people's liberation. Whether or not you fit into any of the identities, I think everyone has a place to read it and enjoy it.
And I know I do. I'll put a link down below.
Ears perked. Ears perked.
For sure. I also think, like, I've been seeing this discourse online. I don't know if I should bring this up. Like, this is kind of hot.
No, let's bring it up.
This is kind of hot. But just hearing what you're saying about how all of our liberations are inherently, like, tied. And so the voices of specifically, like, Black queer people hold a lot of weight. And listen, not all skin folk is kinfolk. I won't say any Black person off the street, you should just listen to them. I don't think that. The discourse I was referencing, though, is that, so do you know who Madeline Pendleton is?
No.
Oh my God, please.
Okay.
Madeline Pendleton is the owner of Tunnel Vision. It's an online boutique. They sell like alt clothing.
Okay.
And they are, I believe, a socialist, but like basically, no, they're not. And like,
yeah. Sometimes it's like, do we know what socialism is?
they kind of just doing whatever,
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
And like their whole ethos is like, you know, they're a white, non-binary, femme-presenting person, and they, you know, are like everyone at their company like gets paid the same, right? Like they have these ethics that are built into the brand, and then they're real loud about it on social media, and there's always something going on. I try to scroll. This time
I'm going to do that when I get off this podcast. I will be, yes.
they're really interesting. But I tend to scroll, but they piss me off, so I had to watch, because they went and tried to critique, it actually pissed me off so much that I barely could even engage with it. They tried to critique Cat Black. Are you familiar with Cat Black?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are we coming? Don't ever.
Yeah,
Like,
don't ever in
I'm
your
saying?
life. Like, they paved the way, babe.
Exactly.
Now what?
So it's just like, yeah, I think it's so, that's just me in my ramblings thinking about how important it is to like have our perspectives be concrete, and like really beckon people from outside of like the Black queer community to read it and engage with it, because I don't want to see no more discourse of a white non-binary person disrespecting anybody Black.
No,
Because the Black person is wrong.
no.
I'm scrolling.
Like, I'm scrolling, I'm deleting, and I feel like, yeah, so much of our culture and online culture specifically, like you mentioned, is reactionary. So a lot of it's like, Trump's doing this bad thing, or like, maybe not Trump. Let's save that for later. But I'm like, a lot of like online discourse is based off of criticism and is based off of critique. And I think that some people conflate that with this responsibility to critique everyone and everything around them, even when it doesn't make sense to do that or it's not the best use of energy. And I think that kind of goes into what we're talking about like physical spaces, where it's like, would they have said that to Cat Black in person, in the face? Would they have said that? Are they community members? Are they friends? Are you serving that role in the grocery store? Are you serving that role at the train station? Are you...
Speak on it.
Are you, like, how are you showing up in real life? Where your body goes? Like, what energy is following you, right? And, like, I think a lot of that can get lost on social media because it's just like, let me say something, let me put something out, where it's like, I think the thing now that I'm personally thinking more about in this environment, in these trying times, is the fact that it's like, okay, but how are we like physically showing up, even if you can't come to an event? Like, let's put stuff out in print so people can have this and maybe their grandkids can find it like later on, where it's like, we're not just critiquing, but we're also creating something new. We're imagining the next step. Because it's like, I feel like we have a good understanding of what is wrong with the world. I think social media has done a great job of that. The next step is to be like, well, what's next? What do we create next? And I think it's hard to do that sometimes. People who are like starting these new initiatives are really still holding internalized colonial beliefs and internalized anti-Black beliefs, and anti-Blackness is absolutely rampant among non-binary people, among leftists, among everyone.
Speak on it.
And even in our own communities, like the internalized anti-Blackness is very real. It's a mass psychosis, and I feel like social media, especially like socialist or leftist media, it's not exempt from it. Absolutely.
I think that's such an important conversation to have that I feel like I've had so many times with so many Black people.
Yeah.
I think it's almost implicit to the Black queer experience is knowing we walk through it's whatever leftism, and you know, we love each other, peace and pride, and you still walk into the room, you still walk into the gay bar, you still walk into the queer function, you still walk into the zine making fair a little differently than everybody else. And like these people that are supposed to be, or a lot of the times purport to be in community with you, will unknowingly, unwittingly not be. But they don't know that. They don't know that. Like, I had this this story is so silly. This person who, I don't even know, we were mutuals, I think, and this is like a white queer person who, you know, was like a radical leftist. I don't want to speak on their politics. I don't remember exactly how they identified politically, but hit my wait, I'm remembering what this was about. This is kind of hot. This is kind of hot.
Okay, I mean, let's get the gloves.
They had made an Instagram caption, like they were really in what's the word? When you're involved, they were really involved in advocacy and protest work regarding Palestine, right? Okay. And they had made this Instagram post, and I know in some of their organizing spaces they had been critiqued. I wasn't privy, this is just what people were saying, and they had made an Instagram post with the caption saying something to them like, I'm gonna get stopped, I'm gonna get flagged at TSA. This is like a white blonde person.
Oh goodness.
Right? You know, and I commented something, and we don't interact, but I was just like, no, you're not.
I think it's gonna be fine.
Like, I think you'll be okay. Like, what are you talking? Like, okay.
Yeah.
And they hit my DMs with a book. A book. You know, speaking on like, you know, we as comrades, and you know, and I never met, and you could have hit me up privately, and and it was just like, okay, babes, or you could have just silently ticked the L.
Because you knew that, we all know that you are right. I fear. Yeah, I think I've had like situations like that too, I feel, where like people will come into my DMs with a book, and for me, like what it boils down to, I'm like, let's actually hop on FaceTime. Like, let's go to a coffee shop and meet up. Like, not actually.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though.
But in situations like that, you know, I'm like, are you viewing the people who are calling you out as comrades for real? Or are you viewing them as opposition that you need to convince that you're not bad and racist?
Exactly. Where is it coming from, this nature to resolve this? Like, is it fear that you're the problem, or is it actually like...
I think it is fear. I mean, I had a really interesting conversation with my partner like some weeks ago. My partner's white, and we were having a discussion about whiteness, and a lot of white supremacy, a lot of the white consciousness, and I don't mean that specific to white people, I mean the white consciousness that has infiltrated the world through colonialism and industrialism, is based off of fear. It's based off of this instinct, this bodily instinct that you're threatened in some way, and that you need to protect your whiteness and need to lash out and demonize anything that falls outside of the binary that you've created to protect yourself.
Real.
So whiteness in and of itself is a self-soothing mechanism. And so when we see white people, or, you know, honestly, non-Black people as well,
Yes.
Who are
Break that up.
influenced by the ideas of whiteness and want to have proximity to whiteness, you're going to see a lot of self-soothing behaviors that for a Black person can be aggressive and can be like, whoa, where is that coming from? I think a lot of it is internalized, and a lot of times we're not even aware of it, which is why I think it's so important to be reading Black writers, and not just, you know, I think when people say read Black writers, there's this assumption that's like, okay, we have to read the classics, which is true. Like, we should be reading Audre Lorde and James Baldwin and all of these thinkers. But it's equally as important to be reading contemporary Black voices, because the discourse is evolving, right?
Every day.
There have been decades since Audre Lorde was writing, and I hope that they would be happy to see that there's a new generation of writers and thinkers who are like evolving this and thinking about these things in today's terms, where it's like, you know, we're talking about non-binary and white people in like socialist leftist spaces on social media. Like, that's a conversation that's really specific to like this day and age. And I think if we're not reading work by people who are talking about that and are not like doing the labor to like find those magazines and support those publishers and thinkers, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice, and we're not truly can't be free without that.
Yeah, that leads me, like, what do you think about, because I feel like that ideology is true, but in a lot of ways can be co-opted by white insecurity, by white fragility, and like, you know, like, this is an odd conflation, but like Madeline Pendleton in one of their response videos to Cat Black, so like, because that discourse was about, as an aside, about Cat Black was basically saying, you as a non-binary person who is not like actively transitioning has a privilege that you should recognize when you walk through spaces. And Madeline Pendleton
What did Pendleton do?
I thought it was so funny. They, in the response video, they said, non-binary people don't owe you androgyny. And I was okay, we're just,
Lord.
okay. And my point there is like, that's true, right?
Yeah.
But it felt like a co-opting, a misdirection, something disingenuous to say to distract the conversation, to derail the conversation. I feel like that same sentiment is there where people who want to be with the movement, but still I think hold some of the fears you were talking about, like white people or non-Black people, where it's like, well, Angela Davis is still alive, and we need Black writers, and it's still like, I find it difficult knowing as a Black person how to like trust, I guess, like I'm like, because it can be so much disingenuity.
Yes, I totally agree. I grapple with that as well. I think in my own life, given like my lived experience, it's definitely hard for me to trust the average person. I mean, I spent a lot of time in like rural America working on farms last year. I met some amazing people, but also I met a lot of people who I fear showed their ass.
Real.
And people do just tend to, you'll think you have a friend, you think you have an ally, they turn around, flash a little ass, and you're like, you're showing your ass right now. I'm like, you moved me, bitch.
You know your ass is out, like, whoa.
Like ass cheeks and all.
You moved me.
You moved me.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I feel like I really relate to that. I understand what you mean. I think a lot of it is like avoidance, honestly. I think it's avoiding the real work, because it's one thing to be, we see all of this with like the diversity, equity, and inclusion rollbacks that are happening right now politically, where it's like there was so much talk, so many LinkedIn posts, so many infographics, and then in the blink of an eye, the system that has always existed and continues to exist are stripping those rights away one by one, where they're coming for our healthcare, they're coming for our education, and all of those things exist largely outside of the digital sphere. Those are things that are happening on the ground in our real life, where it's like, you walk into a school, you walk into a clinic, they're gonna charge you $300. That's some real life shit, right? And I think it's easier to say the right things and learn the script than to understand that and feel that and sit with that in your body and confront how you might be a part of it. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that work because it is hard and bad, and
It's not fun.
Yeah, it's not fun, you know. And I think that social media kind of gives us this quick fix where it's like we can say the right things, or like even, you know, corporate spaces or institutions give, it's like, okay, as long as you say the right things and say, like, you know, we don't owe you androgyny, and kind of regurgitate these catchphrases that have been popularized on social media, you're kind of reaching increasing levels of abstraction where it's like every time you're repeating it, it becomes this abstract slogan or idea where all the while this is happening, third world people, black people, poor people, working class people are fighting for the material tools for their survival and liberation.
Yep.
And I want to see more of those conversations happening as opposed to, like, you know, being like what you were just talking about that internet discourse where it's like you're attacking black trans women in a world such as this.
In these trying times.
Yes, in this environment.
Yeah,
I don't know.
In this climate. I've had an idea in that vein that, like, or a question about where the needle will move to once the people who live in abstraction, typically like white queer people who live in abstraction, the tangible realities are less difficult, like,
Yeah.
for real. How the needle will move as this administration continues to, like, demonize and, you know, perpetuate violence towards the community, like, as like, you know what I'm saying, like, what do you think the effects will be once they are kind of, it does affect them, you know?
Yeah. Ooh, that's such a good question. One that I've asked myself many a time. And honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's interesting because so much of this, I think, is also dependent on class. I think that the more wealth you have or the more inherited wealth you have, you are insulated from the worst of the world, no matter if what your race or sexuality is. I think class is one of the biggest drivers because of, like, injustice and violence, because, like, money is such an easy tool to use to like construct high barriers of entry. But what I see happening, honestly, is I think that as the system falls apart and, you know, they're taking away the healthcare and imposing tariffs on other nations and deporting people, you know, I think there's going to come a time where, like, regular Americans who are just, like, living in abstraction or not, just doing stuff, living their life, I believe that the things that are happening now will begin to strip away at our material circumstances.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, when you don't have healthcare, when the food is too expensive to afford, when climate catastrophe is ruining your house and insurance companies are pulling out last second because they don't want to pay for it and never actually had to. Once that starts affecting people on, like, a wider, more universal scale in America, I think we're going to start to actually see some
Friction,
some heat, some sparks flying in a real way. Because I think, you know, for black and queer people, for working class people as well, or anyone who isn't working with, like, the cushion of wealth, we're feeling that. Like, we're feeling those attacks to...
It's hot.
Yeah, it's hot.
in here.
It's hot in
For
here.
sure.
The heat is rising.
For sure.
I don't think the heat is rising for everyone, though. I think it's one thing to have the luxury to, like, talk about it and theorize. But I think we're going to be forced into praxis, into the real work that it takes to, like, establish our sovereignty over ourselves and to choose our right to, like, live and have food and have a strong community. But I think it's going to take a lot of heat to get that to a place where that's happening for everyone, I fear.
No, I absolutely agree. And it's something I even, like, pondered over in the first episode with Nussie, where I'm like, you think we actually gonna do it? Like, but
yeah.
peace and love.
I mean, I think a lot of people won't do it. I think it's just, like, human nature in a way for people to not do it until they have to. And I think that goes with, like, even this conversation about political discourse, because it's like, it's if you're not going to confront the intersection between, if you don't have to confront the intersection between, like, gender and race, if you don't have to think about how the experience of black people is different from you and sit with that guilt and shame, then why would you? Same thing where it's like,
Whoa.
whoa. Or, you know, and I think the answer of, like, why should you is because it is going to affect all of us. The abuse that's enacted against black people is, like, a trial run for what will be done to the working class and white Americans. Like, to the ruling billionaires and politicians, that shit do not make a difference.
Yeah,
I
not at
fear.
all.
But yeah, I hope we're gonna do it. I'm trying to do it. Peace, yeah, so much love. Just
So
kidding.
much peace and love. We're just doing it. Like,
Yeah, it's been done.
it's not a euphemism.
It's been done. It's actually past tense completed.
It's over already.
It's over.
Did y'all see that? You want to see me do it again? Like,
Yeah.
I just did it.
Oh my god, wait, love that we're in the socialist utopia right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
I just got here.
With Pendleton? Was it Pendleton? Pendleton is our leader. We're marching.
President Pendleton.
President
please.
Pendleton.
Yes. Oh my god. I love them just asking, like, Ava, could you solve like the global global crisis? But I'm interested in hearing your perspective on some of the tactics I think that are coming up socially and culturally that I think the powers that be are using to create distractions, discourse, discontent amongst people who have people on the left and right who have shared interests, who have way more in common than anybody up there, right?
Yeah.
And you're also a Tisch grad. I can't believe it took me this long to say another Tisch grad.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like there was this TikTok trend, I'll insert it, where, you know, like typically students from Gallatin, if you don't know, Gallatin is a school where you can make your own degree, are at graduation talking about their degrees, just being like, I got my degree in this. And if you don't know, a lot of Gallatin degrees, I'm gonna insert it. But
my name's Nikki. I'm studying Latin American women in visual culture.
Hey, my name's Brad. I'll just have a iced oat milk latte, grande, please.
yeah. They're pretty creative. They're pretty different.
Yes.
But I also, like, I know people in those videos. I know what they're doing with their degrees. I know they're doing amazing, valuable as fuck things.
Yeah.
It's okay and legal to be an expert in something.
It actually is legal.
Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't taken that away from us
Not
yet.
yet, but they're trying. Like, the thing is, these people, these white men, typically, I want to say from, like, Silicon Valley or Middle America, will stitch them and be like, oh, actually, I wanted foam in my coffee, or you can drop me off at the corner. This is a thing.
Oh my
and they get a lot of engagement. Like, it seems like a real, some type of, what is the word, division?
Division divide and
tactic?
conquer.
It's some sort of tactic around division where clearly, you know, people are seeing these young people on the coast getting what they see as like elitist degrees that do nothing when really, you know, and they're also speaking to a level of class. Like they are assuming these students have that, you know, and a lot of the people in these videos are like first-gen Americans, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance to it. But like I really saw it as a tactic driven in like trying to demonize the liberal arts. Soft skills, like we were talking about.
Yeah, soft skills.
Or even like being really invested in one thing.
Yeah.
And being really understanding, being an expert in one thing. I think right now the culture is trying to demonize, like think about how the nose lady, so disrespectful. Do you know what I'm talking about though?
The nose lady?
She went viral on Twitter for writing a dissertation for her PhD on the pretty much raciality and class implications of scent.
Oh,
you didn't hear about this?
No.
Very interesting.
Listen, I deleted X.
Oh no, that's so real. That's so real. But she got ate up for it, and I think that's a further perpetuation of the ways that the culture is trying to be like, stop learning and go get a job in tech, like go get a tangible skill. So as a writer, how do you make sense of that in the culture? Why do you think it's happening? How do you feel about it? How do you respond to it?
Yeah. Okay. I will preface this to say, one of my side quests is I did work in finance. So I feel like, I feel like this is an interesting question for me because I've worked in finance. Last year, I was working on farms for 8 or 9 months, and hopefully I can do that again this year once the growing season starts. But also throughout my life, I literally went to NYU and got a more useless degree than any Gallatin degree, which is film production. Sorry to my Tisch, but not useless. But I think there's a lot going on and stuff and things like that. I think that there's this in the idea of the American dream and the ideal American life, a lot of it is based around labor. And I think this idea of labor, what labor is right, what labor is wrong, is really interesting because like all of these divide and conquer tactics, I do think are just that, a way to divide the working class and allow us to see ourselves as different, where in the same way we're all working, we all only really have one tool if we're not billionaires, which is our labor and is our buying power, right?
Real.
So all of these discussions around like, oh, this is a fake degree, fake job, or even like sometimes like on our side of things where like we're not really thinking about farmers, we're not really thinking about blue collar workers who are fighting to unionize and fighting to get rights because a lot of the bigger firms and companies won't hire union workers. There's a lot going on in like the labor space right now. And I think like all of, you know, that TikTok trend is a diversion from the real like attacks on the working class that are happening right now that affect all of us.
So true.
I think that, yeah, that's honestly like, that's my take on it, because I think that you need all types. Like when I was in finance, I feel like the work I was doing was like at least as meaningful as the work I do as a writer, at least. And I think a lot of times there's these like shadowy realms of like, what is this person doing? Or like, what are real workers supposed to do? Like when you actually think like, what are the tasks that you are doing?
Yeah.
It's like a lot of it is meaningless because you're just trying to reach your 40 hours that you need to get healthcare and a salary.
Real.
For me, that's the real problem. So that's affecting workers across all sectors and industries, whether you have like a long form major from Gallatin or whether you didn't go to college and are working at Target.
Real.
Like you're still being exploited. You're still like at the whims of the ruling class and the working class. And it's like, it's time for us to start having those conversations. But I feel like those conversations don't happen for real on social media as much, because increasingly these platforms are owned and controlled by the working and ruling class because they're picking up on it. And so now we're seeing meaningless drivel such as like foam my coffee, whatever, foam your own fucking coffee and start, you know, make it unionize.
Yeah,
Damn.
that's such an important point. That is like, even I'm over here, I think my brain is always trying to understand what the opposition is saying and always trying to be like, okay, but like you're thinking that because of like this divide in like culture, regionality, race, like there's so many, but it's like, yeah, actually fuck all of that. It's like, actually, like, can any of us pay our bills? Can you pay your bills, Brad? Okay, so like let's work together. Like, let's talk about it. You don't have to be mad about my degree. Like we just need to lower the price of groceries.
I think there's
Like I've been prompting you a lot with like these. This is such a fun game. I'm just like, here's something I saw on social media, Ava. Please make sense of it. But another thing I saw on social media that I wanted your take on is there was this discourse happening a couple weeks back, specifically with like within Black queer circles, talking about why so many prolific critical thinkers, and like James Baldwin, Lorraine Hansberry, you know, most married and had white partners.
Yeah.
Like,
yes, I do have a white partner.
I mean, I
but I'm just gonna say that, I'm gonna be real. I really think that is like very interesting. I read Xavier's post about it, and
check out Xavier's post.
yes,
I'll link it, actually.
yes, on Substack, and I think he did a great job of like kind of explaining that. What was the point that they made that really stood out to me from that? One thing that they said was like, what are Xavier's pronouns?
He, they.
Okay, yes, that's what I thought. Yes, but he was talking about how like a lot of times as especially Black people who are doing like community organizing work or like literature work, I think it's a very vulnerable position to be in, like whether you're a content creator who's doing like really important things or a community organizer who's really like genuinely wants to make the world better, as I assume like James Baldwin and Lorraine Hansberry all did, and as they did in the world.
Quite literally.
I think it's a very vulnerable position to be in, and I think that sometimes you can feel like a white partner can almost offer protection to the assaults on your Blackness.
Yeah.
And I think that there is still these, you know, on one end, it's like we like who we like, and sometimes people come into our lives, and it's amazing. When I broke up with when my ex and I broke up, let me get the passive stop. I was like, oh, I'm not dating another white person. Like, I told myself that. I was like,
I'm there right now.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going to do it. And then, you know, because I just
Love is love.
Love is love, and like if you meet a person who makes you feel safe and protected and trusted, I think that should be the answer, and that should be it. And I'm also biracial, so I will say that
It's legal.
It's legal. It's legal. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it is.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think there's something there, even potentially, I don't know, I'm just meandering, but the idea of like tangible realities and the tangible impact of like these incredibly talented and integral creatives and thinkers who did a lot for the community. I think it's obviously like an interesting observation, but I also think there became in the essence of the debate, a morality judgment on people that did way more than a lot of y'all on twitter.com will never do. I won't call it X.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of that like criticism and morality attached to interracial dating, and that's something that's always upset me, because I'm like, that's not a way, like, what is your goal, right?
Yeah,
like,
no.
That's not really a way to,
Yeah.
And I think like desirability still plays into like so much of who we're attracted to and why we're attracted to people and why we react to things a certain way. And I think it's okay to hold space for that and to be kind to people who are in interracial relationships, because it's like, for me, the issue with I only have an issue with interracial relationships if like you're dating a white person and you're like propagating like anti-blackness as far as like desirability and
whether internally or externally.
Exactly. But I'm like, if you are a black person who's dating someone who's not black and you're contributing to your community, have friends who are black, hopefully, and like are engaging with black people's liberation and well-being, then I think it's a bit unfair to demonize it. I'm like, why we doing that?
I mean, they're bringing somebody who could stand on the front lines. That's important. We
Yeah,
need that partner. Get in front of me.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Bring them.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I don't know, whenever a black person finds love or joy, I'm like, good for y'all. Good for you.
I say black women go where you're loved. I always say that, especially I think a lot of people, I think these discussions frustrate me more in a specifically lesbian context, because I'm like, y'all, there's really like,
it's very
slim pickings, I fear, like, or not even,
and I agree, and I think that sometimes in the community, in the black community, we hold ourselves to really high standards. Like, there's definitely been like times where like in my relationships with black people, like romantic relationships, I've been scrutinized for like how I wear my hair and my style and the way that I speak, and like, for just being like not black enough or whatever, where like, I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, that's a whole other conversation.
4 minutes.
Yes, we have 4 minutes. But I think that we hold ourselves to really high standards, and sometimes I think that if you're already a perfectionist and already trying to like do the best you can for your community, experiencing that in an interpersonal romantic relationship is just an added stress.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that could play a part in it. I'm not sure, but it's definitely something that like I've seen where it's like, we need to get better at accepting each other within the black community. I'm not talking about, I'm not like police, or just within any community, but like accepting each other as we are.
Absolutely.
And as we show up, where it's like, okay, if my edges aren't laid, or if I don't have what you think, if I don't speak in the way you think other black people should speak, like, that was a convoluted sentence.
No, I get what you mean though. Yeah.
I'm like, I should still be deserving of love. All black people should still be deserving of love, no matter what, right? So I think that some of us are still dealing with that internalized anti-blackness in that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think with white people, they're dealing with such a whole other realm that, I don't know. I just think that could play a part in it too.
No, I agree. It's all that fear. It's just, it's directed on us in a way, and it's perpetuated by them, like white people, I mean. But it's still like, I was gonna say, it seems so, like, another discourse. Sorry, Kate. But like, there was this girl who got on TikTok crying because her gym crush basically played her. Asked her on a little date.
As gym crushes do. Never trust a gym crush. If that's the one thing y'all take away from this.
Maybe I'll insert it, but like, she's crying, she's upset.
Yeah, I kind of was in my head like, oh, you can respond when it comes to something sexual, but you can't respond with me just wanting to spend genuine time with your dumb ass. I did cry. I cried on the Stairmaster, and I cried on the motherfucking goddamn treadmill. I almost had a panic attack. Not because he was talking to a girl. It was the fact that in that moment, I realized that he did not see me as a person. He did not value me as a person. He just saw me as someone who could boost his ego when he needed it, and hopefully a quick fuck in his book.
Is that legal? Tell me right now, is that legal, what I just said?
That's legal.
I think that's legal, right?
That's legal.
To be upset about your gym crush playing in your face and, like, just trying to fuck and then posting a TikTok about it. Maybe I wouldn't do it, but I think it's allowed.
It's
right?
allowed.
People acted like she shot someone in the street. It was actually insane. And it was a real discussion surrounding black women. Like, she's a black woman and these are other black women. Her just calling her embarrassing, saying, like, this is dumb, like, she's a bird, like, I would never have a man, like, have me like this. And I'm like, do you guys actually know this reflects so much more on you? Like,
yes.
I do think there's a real morality issue, or, like, this issue that's so clearly internalized regarding, like, the way, because there's so much pressure on black women to present a certain way and not let a man do this. I think specifically in straight spaces, because I feel
it's a whole thing over there.
But I just, like, over there. But it's so transparent to me because I feel like it's definitely rooted in at least those people who were critiquing her and even her relationship to men. And like, as someone who's decentered men, respectfully, like, it's so clear to me that I'm like, this isn't really about, like, she upset you because he upset you. There's some man that upset you. And now you will never cry on TikTok.
I mean, not to quote what could have been, but like, we exist in the context of all which you came in which we live.
I've
we
heard
do.
that. I've heard that somewhere.
And some of y'all are acting like you did fall out of the coconut tree.
Yeah.
You know? But I think that's a good example of that, where it's like, we're not exempt from colonialism. Black women are not exempt from, even though they don't benefit from it, we don't benefit from it, like, statistically as much or really at all. We can still have the colonizer in our minds that when we see, exactly. When we see another black woman crying on a screen, the colonizer in our heads, we don't even is so ingrained that it feels like a part of our own voice that we haven't grappled with yet. Is like, you're a bird. You're a bird. Or you're goofy, or you're not this, where it's like, we actually do need to do, I think, a better job of holding space for pain and confusion and, dare I say, illegality. Like, shit that's just like,
that's not legal.
Shit that's not legal, you know? Like, we need to hold space for that instead of, like, and I think also, I think so much of this is moving from an individualistic mindset to a communal mindset, where it's like, when you see suffering, the goal shouldn't be to avoid it or, like, view yourself in positionality to someone else's suffering. The goal is to just be there, as humans have been there for each other since the dawn of time. Like, I promise you, there is a world outside of this shit. There is, but we have to make it. That's our responsibility.
Chills. Well, I loved holding space for you. I'll hold space for you anytime. This was thumbnail. This was fantastic. I feel rejuvenated. I hope you guys do as well. I know you do, honestly. Like, I'm here. I'm gonna think about life.
Thank you.
But thank you all so much for watching. Please go check out Ebony Tomatoes Collective and the incredible work and writing they're doing. They just dropped a new issue. What's it called? Against the Tide. And where can they find it? You can find it on our website. You can find it on our Instagram. Everywhere. Substack. Available TikTok. Now. Follow Ava's Substack. I'm gonna link all the links. Just go down there. Thank you so much for watching. And let's hold space for each other genuinely. I'm holding space for all of you. Yeah. See you next week. Subscribe.